Time now for our Crime Time segment. This is where we take a look at stories from around the nation, bring in our own experts to get some insight and perspective, people who have done the job. And with us tonight, folks, retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey started with the LAPD in 1980, worked in patrol and specialized units, including gangs, and she's also the author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Also with us, Stephen Gaynor. Stephen spent 25 years as a police officer and homicide detective. He was a sergeant in the police department's Ranger unit, and he currently holds dual leadership roles in the Fraternal Order of Police. Stephen, Sergeant, great to have you both here. Our first story tonight comes from KGTV in San Diego. You've got some men going door to door offering COVID testing.
A knock at the door just past 6:30 Friday night. Two men, masks pulled below their mouths, outside Anna's home near Southwestern College.
Can I help you?
Anna's question through her Ring doorbell gets an odd reply.
I was looking for the Queen of the Council.
Moments later, the man at the door makes his pitch.
I was looking for the Queen of the Council. We're out doing COVID testing. Have you folks checked yet?
Anna, an ICU social worker, sensed something shady.
No. Goodbye.
Just 10 minutes prior, the man who was standing back was at the home of neighbor Alice Segovia with a different offer.
He said that he was there about new metering that would be coming. Asked if I was the homeowner. I just lied to get him out of there and said I didn't own my home.
Segovia also abruptly said goodbye, so she never found out what he was after. But minutes later, that COVID offer
We're out doing COVID testing. Have you folks checked yet?
is one James Lee of the Identity Theft Resource Center is familiar with. He points to reports of door-to-door COVID testing scams in the Midwest a month ago. Often there was a promise of a test that never happened.
What they're really after is your personal information. It ends up with someone divulging their credit card or debit card and their other information, and then nothing ever arrives.
Because these men haven't been identified as suspects in a crime, we've blurred their faces. For Anna, their pitch was beyond suspicious.
Take advantage of people during this time. It's planned or fear to take advantage of them is a horrible thing to do to somebody else.
All right, seems a little fishy to me, but is there anything for police to do in this case? Right? And they're not suspects at this point, but is there anything that police can do? Sergeant, is there anything that police can do in a case like this where you've got someone ring the doorbell but nothing really transpires?
Well, we know they're up to something. We just don't know what. And so there's nothing police can do to deter this bad behavior. But certainly, I would suggest, if you can, look for vehicles, take a picture if the Ring device allows you to do that. And I would say contact the police and just make an incident report. That's what we call it here in Los Angeles, something that you want to make them aware of that doesn't quite rise to the level of criminal activity, because they may not have committed a crime at this location, but 3 houses later, they may very well. They may happen upon an unsuspecting elder or a woman alone and may be an opportunist and harm them physically.
Yeah, Stephen, that's part of the frustration as I see the story, because, you know, if they're changing stories from door to door, I don't think they're telling the truth, so they're up to something.
Correct.
But up until this point, based on what we know right now, it doesn't seem like they have crossed that line yet. But what do you think police can do or can't do in a situation like this?
Well, they would definitely be suspicious individuals, as Sergeant Dorsey said, and we would want to follow up and see if anybody else had any kind of Ring camera views of them, or maybe some camera views that picked up a vehicle, like the Sarge said. But definitely worthy of a follow-up. They're obviously up to something criminal in nature because they have 2 different stories. It would have been nice if police could have captured them or contacted them, even though they hadn't done anything wrong, and we would have been able to identify them, check on business licenses or permits, check on warrants, and just file a report with names in case something happens in the future, because they're definitely up to criminal activity. They're not doing anything that's legitimate.
Not looking to help folks, that's for sure. Next story comes from WCPO in Cincinnati, Ohio. A search continuing for a missing 5-year-old.
Authorities have asked us to stay about half a mile away from the boat dock where they believe 5-year-old Cameron Walters went missing. Now, I'm told there are at least 2 deputies down by that dock to be there just in case, but the official search will resume again later this morning. Now, we're told by Adams County Sheriff Kim Rogers that they got the call for the missing 5-year-old around 5 in the afternoon, Memorial Day. He says Cameron was last seen swimming around the boat dock, getting in and out of the water, and that is critical information because the family has told police that Cameron does not know how to swim. Now, the family also told police he doesn't have any kind of mental conditions, and so they first called all the campers initially to look for him. They couldn't find him, and so next they called police for help. We're told Cameron has green eyes, blonde hair, is 3 feet tall, and weighs about 45 pounds. And this is really an all-hands-on-deck situation. A bunch of agencies called, including Claremont County and Butler County Sheriffs, to cover the 350 acres of land here on this campsite. Now, we're told that there was a state highway helicopter that was flying around overhead, but they couldn't find anything. And so the search is going to resume again at 7:30 this morning, and they are bringing in dive crews at 10:30. But of course, if you have any kind of information on the disappearance of Cameron Walters, you are urged to get in contact with the Adams County Sheriff's Department.
All right, is this more of a search or an investigation? And what I mean here, Stephen, and I'll start with you, is are we searching for someone who's missing, or are we investigating circumstances around the disappearance to see, all right, well, maybe someone was up to no good here?
Well, we're doing both in this case. We are investigating whether that child went into the water, in which the follow-up story he indeed did, and was located the next day. And but the investigation part of that is, why is a 5-year-old at the water's edge with no supervision? So, you know, the investigation for the detectives would be, is this child neglect? Although it's a tragic situation for a parent to lose a child, why did they allow a 5-year-old to be by the water's edge with no supervision? That is apparent from what we can tell. So it is both an investigation and a search. And certainly, as it said in the story, law enforcement goes into it hoping to find that child at a neighbor's house or somewhere close by in good conditions. And in this case, it just didn't happen.
Didn't happen. So, Cheryl, as you're doing the initial investigation, how do you figure things out, and are you testing people to make sure people are telling you the truth about what they saw, what they heard, and trying to piece things together here as you're trying to find and ultimately recover the child?
Absolutely, and the statements of the parents are going to be critical because, after all, this is a 5-year-old lacking supervision, and we've seen instances, and I'm not saying that this family had anything to do with the mishap, but there have been instances where parents will purport something, and then we later found out that no, they were a little more involved in either the disappearance or the death of a child. And so it's going to be very important to see what the parents have to say, and then how those stories may evolve or change over the next couple of days.
All right, we've got a lot more to cover here. When we return, really compelling video coming to us from the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. A situation escalates very quickly, gets very intense. We've got the video, and our experts still standing by.
Open door! Turn out the door!
Shots fired. Some video released by the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. Another one of the stories we're covering tonight in our Crime Time segment. Still with us, our experts giving us some insight tonight. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, retired LAPD sergeant, and Stephen Gaynor, former homicide detective, also leadership role over at the Fraternal Order of Police. Our next story, as we saw, comes from the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. A suspect using a truck as a weapon against deputies.
Hello, I'm Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. This is a critical incident video about a deputy-involved shooting we had on April 1st, 2020. It began when one of our community service officers spotted a stolen truck and trailer in the city of Temecula. Our deputies responded, and when they made contact, the driver failed to stop for the deputy and a vehicle pursuit began. The pursuit ended when the pickup truck and trailer became stuck on a dirt road in a rural part of the county in the unincorporated community of Awanga. As you will see on the body-worn camera video, after becoming stuck on the dirt road, the driver of the truck backed up in the direction of the pursuing deputies, who were now standing outside of their patrol cars. In response, one deputy fired 2 rounds from her service weapon. A second deputy then fired 1 round.
Open the door!
Shots fired.
Our department will internally review and evaluate the actions of our deputies to ensure they acted within the policy and training standards. We take the use of force very seriously, and we make every effort to de-escalate these situations whenever possible.
All right. How does an officer adjust when circumstances elevate so quickly like they did right here? Sergeant Dorsey, I'll begin with you.
So you have to anticipate if somebody's running from you in a vehicle and they should happen to stop, one would think that they may take off again. And so you always want to put yourself in a position of advantage if and when you get out of your vehicle. There's many reasons why you don't ever want to shoot at someone who's behind the wheel of a car, because number one, you could incapacitate them and then they lose control of that vehicle, and then you've got a real mess on your hands. And so I don't know if the second officer fired because it was contagious gunfire and he didn't realize it was his partner, or maybe he thought it was the suspect. That will all come out of the investigation. But I think the officers could have put themselves in a better position in terms of where they stood so that they weren't in harm's way. And if you're not in harm's way, you don't shoot at a vehicle just because it's moving.
Stephen Gaynor, things escalated very quickly in this one.
Yeah, it's a split-second decision in the circumstances, and in the video, which isn't shown with the one we just showed here, but we watched earlier, was one officer fires, the female fires because she said she feared the trailer was going to back into her, and the other officer fired that 1 round because he said there was something in his hand. I don't know if that's a gun or not, but both of them expressed on their video that they were in fear of something, which caused them to shoot. I don't know if she shot at the truck and hit the driver then, or that one shot as he was fleeing might have got him. I don't know which shot got him. Obviously, we don't know at this time based on the investigation, but it is a split-second decision, and it is real easy for us to sit back and Monday quarterback these things. When it's all happening in front of you, it is so quick and so difficult, and you just have to try to put yourself in the position of those officers and say, okay, I see what they're facing, and I kind of understand it. Now, I don't know that I would have fired at the trailer backing up. It didn't seem like it was coming that fast at you, but I'm looking at a video, and I'm sitting here comfortable in my office. She's in a situation. I'm not going to criticize her at this point, not seeing the whole thing.
Cheryl Dorsey, Sergeant Dorsey, let me ask you about the body cams, because that's a big part of these investigations now, because a lot of these departments and offices have body cams, and we're seeing it. How, from your perspective, how much do they put you into the shoes of the officers and the deputies' perspective, these videos that we're seeing, these body-worn cameras?
Well, what it does is it gives you an opportunity to see what the officer said, but what you can't do is get in that officer's head. And listen, let's not pretend that police officers don't know now that all they have to do is say, I was in fear, because it's very difficult to argue that she wasn't in fear. The fact of the matter is, we've already heard the vehicle was stuck. It wasn't going anywhere. So why the heck are you shooting at it? It makes no sense to me.
Next story comes to us from WTVF in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm reading you a quote, and it's a quote from the victim herself, who says, "This guy picked the wrong girl to abduct."
I always go on daily walks and runs.
Autumn Ryan had just started walking after a 45-minute run Sunday morning.
He must have been following me
When a driver pulled up on the curb near Petway Avenue.
Pulled up right next to me going northbound on McFerrin, and he rolled the window down and just said, get in the car, and if you don't get in the car, I'll make you.
Then she says he threatened to force her inside his vehicle.
Oh Lordy, this guy picked the wrong girl to mess with, and he did. My adrenaline kicked in, and I bowed up, and I started to scream on top of my lungs at him.
When she pulled out her phone to record, Autumn says he took off.
Again, my adrenaline was rushing, but I will say yesterday, in the morning, my quiet time in the morning with coffee, I will say that I did get a little bit upset, like now, because I've got 2 kids, and this could have happened to them.
Autumn Ryan tells me she's now walking or running with other people, and she's also carrying mace.
This is the first time that I've ever had this experience.
The suspect was last seen leaving the area in a charcoal Nissan Sentra.
And a number of other women have seen this same guy around our neighborhood.
Neighbors and police are now on the lookout for the vehicle, which had a Tennessee plate and temporary tags.
Word has to be out there that this is happening.
Autumn hopes by sharing her story, she can encourage others to be brave and fight back.
This guy picked the wrong girl because I'm not timid.
What do you think about how she handled everything here, Stephen Gaynor? Obviously, it turned out well, but your thoughts?
Well, she's a very confident lady in her abilities and felt that she could handle this. But what if he had had a gun? Then it would have been a different story. Her screaming at him. I don't know, maybe run from the scene screaming. I don't know. She did what she thought was best. It worked for her case, and he didn't escalate the situation, so it all worked out. But it's a tough choice, and she took the choice that she felt most comfortable with.
Sergeant, I know she wasn't expecting this, but she reacted the way she did. She'll have a plan next time out. We heard about that. But your thoughts about the way she handled the situation?
Well, listen, I'm in complete agreement with her. I would have been screaming, and I would have been going in the opposite direction of the travel of that vehicle. And so, because what we know for sure is if he had bullied her and scared her enough to paralyze her, cause her to get in that car, certainly things would have ended very differently if he had been able to take her to a more secluded area. Lord only knows. So I'm of the opinion, if you're going to hurt me, you're going to hurt me here on the streets. One thing I would add that is if you're going to run or walk, and young people like to have their earplugs in and listen to their music, do it opposite the traffic so that they're facing you as you're walking or running rather than coming up behind you and giving them the opportunity to sneak up on you, particularly if you're preoccupied by listening to music or texting or whatever else you might be doing in the midst of a run.
Great tip. Great information tonight. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Stephen Gaynor, really do appreciate your insight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.